everyone. Welcome to the Marketing Drip, where we drip tips to scale your business digitally. Abby here. Today's episode is part of our Fortune Management series. We're talking with coaches all over the US to give guidance for all dentists wanting to go to that next level. In this episode, I talked with Jon Harris, the managing partner of Fortune Management. Jon is a nationally certified speaker and has supported hundreds of doctors and their teams in unlocking their potential within themselves as well as their practices. He frequently speaks throughout the Southeast and is known for his high-powered, energetic, and enthusiastic approach, which you will see in this episode. His passion for overcoming common challenges, building high-performance teams, and achieving results make him an invaluable resource to any doctor seeking greater growth, profitability, and quality of life. So let's just dive in. Let's begin today's drip provided by Digital Resource, a full-service digital marketing agency that is your resource for everything digital. Hey, Jon, thank you so much for joining us today on Drip and Dripping Some Knowledge. Super excited to have you on, so thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Now, I really just want to dive into this because you have a lot of experience in the dental field and just picking your brain and your knowledge. So really based on your experience, Jon, what is often overlooked when you see dental practices and you work with dental practices?
Oh, man. I imagine that my response to that question could vary quite a bit from one end of the spectrum to the other. But I think if I had to take everything into consideration and isolate one area of opportunity I think gets neglected is probably communication is probably the biggest one. Not just how we communicate with ourselves, but how we communicate with others. So it's one of the things that I talk to my clients a lot about is communications in everything that we do. It's in business, it's in personal life, it's in stress, conflict resolution, it's in virtually every aspect of our lives, but there was never a course taught on it, in grade school and high school and college, so it's an incredibly important aspect of our lives, but we never really received an education on it unless we sought out resources and information and did a little self-study. So I think that is the underlying theme that influences virtually every result in our life.
That's so true. It's something we're just supposed to naturally pick up, It's like, oh, we get taught English and like how to speak, but actually understanding how other people communicate and how you can really drive it home. And to your point, that could be the practice, your team members, it could be patients, it could be your family and your personal life as well. Are there tips that you commonly give about communication and just like making that stronger, just pointing people in the right direction in some way?
Yeah, there's a really good one. A lesson I learned several years ago. I was in Mexico for a corporate meeting and I took an Uber to a gym, and on my way back from the gym, my wallet fell out of my pants. Now I'm in a foreign country and I'm without a wallet now, and I'm at the guard shack trying to get into our condo, and I'm yelling at the guy, telling him that my wallet is in the Uber, and the Uber just drove off, and he's just looking at me like I'm crazy, obviously, because he doesn't speak English. So I learned a valuable lesson, and that is don't raise your voice and prove your argument. So don't get loud, don't raise your voice, improve your communication. And so had I known how to speak Spanish, I probably could have got the result a lot quicker, so I think a lot of times we overlook, that. I think most people, I don't think, do a very effective job, communicating with their self and therefore managing their state. We don't attach effective meanings to things. And therefore we don't respond in effective ways, and we generally don't create the kinds of results that we want. So I think that's where it all starts.
Oh, that's such a great example. It's like emotions kick in, and if you can't hear me or understand me, you naturally want to speak louder, but it's I guess being maybe more empathetic and like actually understanding where they're coming from in order to communicate stronger. And that's such a great example. I love that. But it's true every day. Like you're dealing with that with team members and again with patients, and it's like, how do you not understand what I'm saying? But it's like they could be reciprocating that right back, like how do I how am I supposed to understand what you're saying? Right? Like
Right.
being able to,
Maybe they're not hard of hearing. Maybe you're just bad at communicating.
yes. Oh my gosh. That's so strong. That's so strong. Well, kind of on that too, Jon. I mean, as far as you being a coach, I know there's so many different topics that you guys go about and talk about at Fortune Management and just making sure these practices are set up for success. So, like, are there barriers that you see that hold practices back over and over again from growing?
I'm an advocate of Simon Sinek. I've been following him for quite some time, and
The
one of the
best.
things that he is really conveys very well is the fact that everything stems from leadership. And I'm going through a course right now that's helping me put together a keynote and write a book on the impact of effective leadership. And I think that we're all called to be leaders in one context or another. And it's really a matter of whether or not we accept that calling and accept that purpose. And then what we do with it, because I think leadership is about growth. I think it's about desiring to have a positive impact, not just on the lives of other people, but perhaps even a bigger aspiration than that. And that's have a positive impact on your community or country or world ultimately.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of cliche, but they don't teach courses on leadership growing up. School didn't have it. Dental school doesn't teach it. I know a lot of dentists didn't take very many business courses coming through dental school. But I mean, in my opinion, what's even more important than knowing how to run a business is knowing how to lead other people effectively.
Right.
And I think we all have an inherent calling to do that, but we lack strategy and structure and direction. And we typically don't do that very well. And I find that the skill set, a deficient leadership skill set, is far more detrimental to the growth and development of an organization than a deficient business plan.
The execution of it, to your point, the direction, I quote this all the time, so this is probably always redundant, but Brene Brown always says clear is kind and unclear is unkind. And I love that, because as far as what you're saying is leadership, making sure that you are communicating, right? And you are saying what your goals are and where you want your practice to be, and having your team a part of that. I think a lot of practices tend to, in business owners, doctors, right? They don't see themselves as business owners or entrepreneurs, or they don't see themselves as business leaders, right? But you absolutely are. And in order to achieve those goals, it's not leaving your team out, it's having them a part of it, right? And making sure they are leading, but finding the right team members too, I'm sure, is part of it. But like with turnover and everything going on, it's,
most business owners, and in this case, dentists, aren't very effective leaders. And so therefore they don't necessarily set the greatest example for their employees to step into leadership roles. And therefore leadership development isn't necessarily an attribute of the organization. And I find that one of the number one things that interferes with our ability to lead other people is a lack of authenticity. The Chinese say that we wear three masks: the mask that everyone sees, the mask that only our close friends and family see, and then the mask that only we see. And I think the process of leadership is embracing vulnerability, being okay and confident with who you are and where you are in life, and sharing that with other people so that they see that you're human. They say, look, I didn't wake up in this place. It took a lot of hard work to get here.
Yeah.
And so I think that bleeds over into the communication aspect, because most people do one of three things. They don't say what needs to be said, and they expect the message to get to the intended party, or they say everything but what needs to be said, and they expect the other person to read between the lines. Or worse, they don't say anything at all, and they expect somehow the message to, resonate with the other party.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've learned is that the absence of communication says a whole lot more than communication ever will. And so I find that the lack of communication is because we lack the confidence to be genuine and authentic and say, this is how I feel about this thing. This is how I would like it to be done. This is my expectation. Can I count on you to do that? For whatever reason, we have learned that that's uncomfortable. And so we don't lead effectively because of poor communication skills.
I love that you mentioned vulnerability too. That's so true. Like it all ties into being open and honest with your team and yourself of what you actually want to achieve. And do you think it comes into play of just like the fear of failing and just not being open and honest with it?
100%. 100%. I think if you want the big red button to push to become a more effective leader tomorrow, the name of that big red button is just embrace vulnerability.
Yeah.
Be okay if you suck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nobody
That's
expects
how
you
you
to
learn.
be perfect. Yeah, nobody expects you to be perfect at everything. You've got to be willing to accept the fact that, not just make mistakes, but make big mistakes and make them fast.
Yes.
Just make sure that when you fall, you fall forward. Drop the ball, learn from it, pick it up and keep running,
Absolutely.
but I tell you, I went through a fairly difficult period of time in my life, and this isn't, a sob story. This isn't woe is me. It's one of the most valuable experiences I ever had.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I learned was I'm a very different person now. And I'm not trying to say that I'm a great person, but I'm a very different person now than I was prior to this experience. And I prefer who I am now as compared to who I was. Well, when I was who I was, I thought I was pretty good. And one of the things that I learned was I had a pretty severe fear of failure. I was terrified to fail. And that's one of the things that drove my work ethic. Well, the event between then and now, I would define as rock bottom. Like if there was a rock bottom and then you could dig 50 feet below that, like I was down there. So like when you've been there, and you've made it to the other side, it's not so scary anymore.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like if you know what failure looks and feels and smells like, and you've experienced it, it's not so scary anymore. You wouldn't want to do it again.
Right.
But
you
if
survived.
I had to,
you did it.
Yeah, if I had to, I could. And I guarantee you I would respond to it a lot better the second go around than I did the first go around.
Yeah.
But for somebody who hasn't experienced that, they're still afraid of that. I'm not judging them. I understand it. I was terrified of it. But sometimes it takes a difficult experience like that to give you perspective because you're afraid of something that you really have no reason to be afraid of.
Yeah. I can't remember the quote or who said it, but it's something about fear and you have so much anxiety. It's like, why go through it twice? Like just go through it when it happens, but don't anticipate it because it will happen. So really you're just doing it twice. And it's true, like why fear it or project it or say, I can't, I don't want to invest in this technology, or I don't know if I should hire. I don't know if I want to put my team through different camps or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but is that going to get you to the next level? Is that going to advance you? What's the worst outcome that could happen? I think looking at it and saying, what's the worst that can happen? And to your very point, realizing that that's not so bad. And even if it does happen, you'll overcome it. And then if it pans out in the good way and not the bad way, what could benefit, right? Like what could come out of it in a good way? That could be a positive way to look at it too, to push yourself. And you don't know until you do it. Certain things, right? You just don't know. And that's why having great people around you too, to make sure that you have that kind of asking other people's experiences and other people's perspective and gaining that knowledge. But at the end of the day, you've got to do what you need to do to make things happen and bring yourself to the next level and your team. It's just that simple.
100%.
Right? It's so easy.
One of the greatest quotes. Now, I don't want to mention the gentleman's name because I'm not I'm not so much a fan of him anymore after recent events.
We'll bleep it. No, I'm just
But,
kidding.
but he said some pretty remarkable things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he's credited for saying, and I wholeheartedly believe in this statement, he said, to be successful, you have to live on the edge of failure.
Love that.
Like imagine it's a cliff. Like most people, I'm terrified of heights. So like if I walk up
Same.
to the edge of a building, like I'm not going to get all the way up to the edge. I'm going to, like, you know what I mean? Like I can tell that there's an edge over there, and I'm going to stay over here where it's safe. And we go through life the same way. I mean, we never get close enough to the edge. And I mean, quite frankly, I know this sounds so cliche, but that's where growth occurs. Like it's that's what discomfort is.
Yes.
You know, it's when you're testing the boundaries of your comfort zone and you're willing to risk discomfort because there is this compelling thing that you want more.
Yes.
You know, that when that becomes a must, that's when we take action, and that's when we're able to experience where, you know, what I believe that we're intended to experience. And this is not to take the conversation in any one direction or the other, but there's a statement that has resonated with me for many, many years. And I am not the greatest at this by any stretch, but I have worked and I've tried very hard to live my life by this philosophy. And it is this, that the spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. And
love that.
To me, what that means is like when I came into this world, I didn't know what anxiety was. I didn't know what fear was. You know, the only thing I knew was confidence and security and certainty and faith and love and courage. That's all. That's who I was. All the other stuff is stuff that I have learned and adopted over the last 40 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
you know what? So if I were to just choose to be confident and courageous and disciplined, then I expedite my path forward. It's almost like you're going through a jungle, because it's like, it's not the water around the ship that sinks the ship. It's the water that gets in. And so we're in the ocean. There's a great quote I came across on Instagram the other day. It said, ships are safe in harbor, but that's not what ships were built for.
Oh, that's a nice drop.
Yeah. So it's like we're in that. We're surrounded by challenges and adversity and all these hardships. And that's what we're made for. But the only reason that stuff seems difficult and challenging, the only reason we call it adversity, is because we're approaching it with fear and anxiety and self-doubt. Like if we could put ourselves in a state of courage, love, and self-discipline and be true to who we actually are, none of that stuff even resonates anymore. Like we make the path forward so much easier, you know? So, I recognize that is, I recognize that is an astronomically difficult thing to do. Which I believe is the purpose.
It's a rush, right? Like it's like if you embrace that uncomfortable feeling, and if you get used to it, you no longer feel uncomfortable. So you've just got to make it your new normal. And then it just keeps pivoting up and up and up from there. But I 100% agree. It's all about self-discipline. It's about confidence. It's making sure that you're enjoying the time that it's happening. Like whenever I talk with a new doctor and they're starting off in brand new practice, I'm like, just remember to enjoy it. Like you're never going to go, maybe you'll go through it again, but for the most part, you're going to look back on this time and you're going to remember and be like, oh my God, I did that. Like, that's amazing. And you're going to think back about the hardships. You're going to think about the wins, but you're going to love both of them when you reflect. And I mean, even thinking about all the things that have happened in life and things that have been hardships and have been positive, I don't know about you. I look at all of those and think like, oh, that's who I am today. And if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have appreciated the good things, right? I would have just been mundane and just been living life every day, checking a box. Like, no, you want to enjoy it, you know, and that's challenging yourself, feeling that rush. I don't know. Could be.
Yeah, it's almost
Good way to look at
it's
it.
almost it's almost as if we fight our intended purpose to some extent. Like we
Ooh,
were
yeah.
built for adversity. So, it's there. We try so hard to find this place that's comfortable and cozy and warm and plenty to eat and all that kind of stuff. But there's no organism in existence that ever like gets to a place of comfort. Like everything is either growing or dying. And the moment that it stops growing is the moment that it starts to atrophy. So like we're constantly, our thresholds for fear, for failure, for growth are constantly evolving. I remember the first prep that I went through, I almost broke down in tears in Kroger in like the bread section because I couldn't have carbs. And I mean, that was like 5-6 years ago. And I'm like, golly, what a baby. You know what I mean? Like I made something that's not hard at all seem 1,000 times more difficult than it really had to be. But now that I've been through it so many times, my threshold is higher. Once you've been through discomfort and hardships and challenges, and once you've failed a few times, failure's not as big of a deal now as it used to be.
Yeah.
So rather than delaying it, just embrace it and, you know what I mean? And just push through it. You're going to get there a lot quicker.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Yeah. It's your new normal. Fail over and over again, and it'll feel good and not painful because it's the fear of not doing it in the first place. Yeah, I love it.
100%.
Love it. So what are tips that you typically give to practices that could run their practice? Like today, what's something that they could change in their practice to make an impact?
There are many people that would say that my responses in our conversation so far are very uncharacteristic. Because I'm a very left-brained, logical, linear person. I'm tactical and methodical. But I'm also very passionate about, the work we do and, the impact that we're able to have on other people. So that sometimes that part of me like takes over and I like latch onto it. But I would say you've got to understand that there's two parts to that equation.
Okay.
And one part does precede the other part. Mm-hmm. So you can have the best business systems, the best processes, the best mechanics, the best automation. You can have the best clinical skill set. You can have the best practice management software, the best location. Like all the tactical, mechanical stuff, you can have the best of the best. But if you have poor people
Mm-hmm.
with a poor culture applying that stuff, you're not going to get very far.
Yes.
In my experience, what I have found is all the right people can have all the wrong stuff, all the wrong strategies, all the wrong information. They're still going to find success.
Yes.
But all the wrong people can have the best stuff in the world and they're still going to fail. So, it's
love that.
People say all the time, and there will be people that listen to this and this following statement, and they'll say, yeah, that's me. I do that. Culture is a priority in my organization. People are our number one priority. Culture is the number one priority. There's not a coach or a consultant out there who's worth their salt that does not advocate for that philosophy.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And people claim and speak about that flag all the time, but there are very few people who actually carry it.
Yes.
There's a difference between saying culture's a priority and culture being a priority. If you've got an assistant who's a phenomenal clinical assistant, but who has a terrible attitude, and you should have fired her 5 years ago, but you're still hanging on to her, culture's really not your highest priority. If you have a choice between investing in a coaching program or a CE program or a team outing to boost morale or giving employees a raise or bonus or buying that piece of dental technology and you choose the dental technology, that's not really the highest priority. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Right.
I'm not saying you're a bad guy, but I'm saying that's fine, but don't say that this is the highest priority if it's really not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Until you call it by name, you can't change it. Mm-hmm. Until you're honest with yourself about what your organizational principles really are, you can't change them because you're in denial. Right.
Right.
So, that's a pretty interesting one.
I love that. And because I was going to ask you too, like what identifies, like a good culture, and you kind of went into that. It's making sure you're fully encompassed in it. Like you can't just check a few boxes and say like, yeah, I'm culture's our number one thing. And that's what we always go by. But it's like, but if you're falling short, or if you're just doing one thing and that's where culture comes into play, like what do you tend to find as like culture that really stands out versus some that don't? Is it the talent? Is it the processes and the bonuses? A little bit of everything?
Yeah. I think numbers, production collection, new patients, patient retention, employee retention, numbers. Like I ask this question to my teams all the time. I'll say, is tooth decay, oral cancer, gum disease, and tooth loss, are those problems? And they always say yes. And I say, I disagree. I don't think those are problems. I think they're symptoms. The problem is poor education, poor prioritization of oral health. Like that's the systemic issue. Okay. We spend a lot of time addressing the problem. So production, collection, new patients, turnover, payroll percentage, all of that stuff, those are just symptoms. Those aren't problems. Those are just symptoms. They tell us kind of where the problems could be. And then you've got to like dig in a little bit and isolate, to the like drill down data and isolate to find out what the source of the problem is and address that. Culture manifests itself in all of those. There's not a number in a dental practice that's not influenced by culture. So if your production and collection is stagnant or declining, if your payroll percentage is, double what it should be, if you've got turnover and you have your average employee tenures a year, those are results that are very symptomatic of a cultural breakdown on some level. The number one I would tell you is profit.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
It's the number one measurement of results in any business is profitability. So if profitability is not where it's supposed to be, then that could be very indicative of, a compromised culture. It not necessarily, may be mechanical. So find out what levers and buttons you need to push and pull, fix that stuff. And if that problem is still there,
it makes me think
then that's a culture problem.
Like whenever we run Google ads or Facebook ads or any of that nature, making sure, specifically Facebook ads, when we run that, we could get all the leads in the world, right? We can collect, based on your budget, we can bring them in. But there is that second element of follow-up and making sure. So if it's a Facebook ad, they have to reach out and they have to be wanting to reach out. There has to be some kind of, whether they're self-motivated or there's something else, right? But that's always a question that we ask. And then with Google, they're going to call them directly. And it's like, well, in order to make sure your marketing dollars are used effectively, you have to make sure that it's getting executed on the phone. Sometimes it's the person, sometimes it's the resources that they have. Like sometimes it's the leadership, right? There's not set goals or clarification on what's priority. All of this comes into play. And to your point, culture is really identifying, making sure they are set for success, but also figuring out how people thrive and don't have that bad apple, like making sure that if they're weighing you down, that you are aware of it. And at the end of the day, it is your business and it's everybody else's business that's there. So if you're not being a leader and seeking out the tools they need, or maybe it's just not a right fit, like determining that and being, again, clear is kind, being clear with your team, setting the goals. When you say retention, it's like employee score too, like making sure that everybody is happy and like getting their surveying them to see like, oh, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you at your job right now? Like kind of just vetting what's
Yeah.
going on. If you don't know, then you're failing your team, you're failing your patients, and you can't be the best clinicians that you can be because it's within your own dental family. It's in your own,
Yeah.
people that you work with.
Yeah. The issue is when you say culture's a buzzword. It's sexy. It's fun to talk about,
Yeah.
but it's very subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody talks about culture, but I mean, how many organizations really have like a culture that you would want to recreate?
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think the issue lies in the fact that few people are willing to do the work, to do the hard
Yeah.
work. Now, I'm not saying that if you don't have a great culture, you're not a hard worker. I mean, working 14, 15, 16 hours a day, that's physically hard work, but that's not the hardest work there is to do,
Yeah.
right? Seeing 35 patients a day, that's hard work, but that's not the hardest work there is to do. The hardest work there is to do is the work that you're avoiding. So I imagine, like,
Yeah.
I go to the gym, there are exercises that I love and there are exercises that I despise. It's the exercises that you despise are the ones you most need to do. Those are the ones that would benefit you the
Yeah.
most. So for most people in business ownership and leadership positions, the exercises that they're neglecting, the ones that they don't want to do, is leading, holding people accountable, coaching, difficult conversations.
Yes.
And those are the things that they most need to do. Well, that's the hard work that shifts a culture. So if
Oh.
you're not willing to do that hard work, quite frankly, you don't deserve that culture. So
Oh.
if you're willing to do that hard work, then you can absolutely make some changes there. And it's the few people who are willing to do that are the ones that set the standard for what an impeccable culture should look like or could look like.
Oh, I love that.
But
Yeah.
what they didn't do, they didn't just read a book and say, oh yeah, I read that book. Well, your culture's not, it's not going to fix itself just because you read a book. You can read 100 leadership books and that doesn't make you a better leader. Like, you've actually got to apply the stuff.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I think a lot of people miss the second step, right? Which is application, like apply
Yeah.
it. Like, that's what makes it actually
Or I
work.
got inspired and I heard this, or, like what we're doing. We're talking about quotes and like what's the, and it's like, but is there any,
Yeah.
are you applying it? Are you actually, and like we said, being vulnerable and pushing yourself. I mean, that's the same. I love the task example because I've heard this before, right? Like, it's easy to avoid those tasks and like keep pushing them off. I do it all the time, right? It's like, oh, but I enjoy doing these things, so I'm going to put them first. There was, I don't know, at some point I heard this, that you could, like, what's one task you've been putting off? Do that and then reward yourself with one of the tasks that you want to do and kind of alternate it that way. Or like having some kind of, or if you complete that, like, go buy yourself lunch, or I don't know, like whatever motivates you and like encourages you. Or I will not go outside and take a short walk until I get this task done. Or accountability is what we call them. And having your buddy that's going to hold you accountable, whether that's your leader or whether that's somebody that you really trust, that's not going to make sure you let down. Having them like just hammer on you and just ask you about it constantly. And like you said, having a great leader is going to make sure that's the work people don't want to do. But once it's in place, it becomes second nature. And then you're always doing those tasks. And you realize, again, it wasn't that bad. It's the idea of it and not wanting to do it because you're not used to it. You're not comfortable with it. But it's getting outside of your comfort zone, like you said earlier, and just making sure you're repetitive and just embrace the uncomfortableness. That's when you know you're changing and evolving and being a better person than you were yesterday or the year before.
Yeah. It's amazing that that's how desperate our culture is for leadership. Marianne Williamson said it better than anybody else in her poem, Our Deepest Fear, when she said, as you're liberated from your own fear, your presence automatically liberates others. Everybody's waiting on somebody to be first. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's waiting on somebody to be first. And then when somebody's first, the first person through the doors always gets bloody. Right. But everybody's waiting on that person to be first. And then once that person's first, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, it wasn't that
They
bad.
did
So
it.
now they have perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now they have perspective. And so now, okay, well, I could go through that too. And so then they do it. And then the next person does it. And then as more and more people do it, everyone's threshold for discomfort changes. So now we become even more desperate for leadership because like the it's a pyramid, like it gets small, the opportunities get less at the top. They
Yep.
get harder. Like the steepest part of the mountain isn't the base of the mountain, it's the very peak.
But it's so much more
Right.
gratifying.
So it's not going to get easier as
Yeah,
you get
because you're
better.
the
It's going to get more
few.
difficult.
Yes.
And the opportunities are going to get fewer and far
Oh,
between. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I feel like we've touched on
Yeah.
that too, as far as like a culture and communication and leadership. But do you believe like these are the main factors that help because everybody wants, like you said, profitability is the main point of a practice, right? Like that's always the end goal. So when it comes to generating revenue and being profitable, do you think those are the main factors, or is there anything that we're missing?
Um, philosophically,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I would say absolutely those things. Strategically, mechanically, there's a variety of them. I mean, patients get healthy over time. So, you
Mm.
know, if you've got patients consistently coming through continuing care, well, over time they're going to get healthy, and they're not going to need a lot of dentistry. So you need to make sure that you've got a healthy influx of new patients. You've got to make sure that you've got a healthy, reactivation mechanism in place, reactivating dormant patients who have fallen out of recare.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that you can accommodate them in a reasonable period of time, that you've got effective language skills, to handle objections and insurance challenges. Like there's a whole host of, like you'd have that conversation all day, but
Right.
I would say probably at the top of the food chain, clinical suite. How robust is your ability to meet patient need,
Mm.
right? Or are you just doing crown and bridge, or are you doing crown bridge, implants, endo, ortho, third molars, Botox, Juvederm, IV sedation, sleep, right?
Yeah.
And how many patients do you have? Because there's only so many, it's only so much crowded bridge in 1,000 patients.
Yep.
So, building as big a patient base as possible, whether that be one location with multiple providers and specialists, or building as big a patient base as possible, if that means 4, 5, 6 locations in, 100-mile radius.
Yep.
And then how robust is your clinical suite? How many needs are you meeting? Are you just meeting one or two needs, or are you meeting a whole variety of needs, whether that is, because you're a super GP or a GPR, or you're bringing out itinerant specialists, to provide those services for patients. But we know from the data that patients want convenience, affordability, comfort. So as the CEO of a dental enterprise, your number one responsibility is to make sure that your organization is progressively meeting those needs.
Yeah.
Because those needs will adjust, will shift over time. They will evolve.
Yep.
And it's going to become harder to meet those needs because you've got what's called competition. Other people trying to meet those needs too.
Right.
So you can't get stuck in the mud. You can't fall asleep at the wheel. Like you've got to understand your consumer, and you've got to be willing to be smart, flexible, and quick.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's part of the pandemic that I appreciate because it pushed people to change rapidly. We've been talking about digital, like having online forms, having online scheduler for years. And now it's like, you have to, like now it's not even a thought. Everybody had to, but it's being able to adapt as the world is changing. And, we are in the digital age, and it is changing faster than ever because in a marketing perspective, like you could change a billboard, right? Like that would be your marketing, is putting out flyers or billboards, and you'd have to print. There's like process to all of this. You can't just have it changed up in one day. You have to design it and make sure it's actually up and put up, and the range that it stays up there. Now we can switch an ad like that within a second. And that's exactly how any business is functioning. It just shows how rapid, which, speaking of being uncomfortable, nothing is more uncomfortable than that, right? When you think you get something down, it changes. And now you have to evolve with it too. But and I think too, it's like having the people around you that are also expertise in their fields to drive you. So to your very point, clinical care is going to be obviously the main driver of your practice. You have to be great at what you do in order for people to want to keep coming, give referrals, give reviews. But in order to make sure that your business is covered in different facets, you got to have a coach, you got to have a marketing company, you got to have a CPA or your lawyer, whoever, right? Like having your board of experts to make sure you don't have to be the expert of everything, just understanding the right people and connections that you have, the trustees that you have to set you up for success. So when that change comes, you feel confident about being more adaptable.
Yeah.
In that nature.
Yeah. I'm very, very guilty of that. I admire people who are very good at saying, okay, this is what I'm good at. I need to find 5 people who are good at these 5 things, and then I'm going to put them on my team.
Yeah.
I admire people. I admire those people because that's not where my mind goes.
Yeah.
My mind doesn't go to, all right, let me find people who are good at what I'm not good at. My mind goes to, all right, well, how do I become good at that too?
Yep. It's hard. Yeah.
Like I want to be good at all of it, and so it's hard. I recognize that it's not the most appropriate approach. Simon Sinek says that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
It's true.
So I do believe that there's tremendous power and leverage in building an enterprise, building a group of people who that's very dynamic and diverse. That's one of the things that has encouraged me to kind of make the shift from, John C. Maxwell's book, The 5 Levels of Leadership. The shift that I'm attempting to make in my life now is shifting from level 3, and in my business is to shift from level 3 to level 4.
Ew.
Which is, for those that are familiar with that book, level 3 is like, you're really good at doing the thing that gets your organization paid. Like I'm really good at coaching and consulting and advising. Like I'm good at that.
Yeah.
But what's more difficult than that is providing the same service or product through other people.
Yeah.
And so any dentist that's watching this, like you may do a great crown prep, great patient experience, great bedside manner. But can you provide the same experience and clinical quality through an associate?
Mm-hmm.
That's the real challenge, because if you can get on that level, if you can get to level 4, now the growth of your enterprise like exponentially grows.
Yes.
If you're the only one that can provide it, you're very limited in terms of how big your organization can get. But once you're able to start to replicate yourself, limitless.
And you're a
the
true
walls
leader.
come down.
Yes.
Yes.
If you are able to replace yourself with somebody else, that's when you are a true leader. Absolutely. Yeah. I love, so true, because otherwise you anything could happen to anybody, and everything you've worked for all these years, and something happens to you. Hopefully nothing happens, but something does, and all of a sudden everything you worked for is just done. It's gone. Oh, I don't know. They did that. I don't know. They did that. They managed that. Who did what? Did anybody else do anything else?
Right.
And you have to be able to function that way, delegate and train them. And it's that trust, right? Like, I think people are always scared that they're going to replace themselves. And then therefore they replace themselves out of a job. And it's like, no, you are replicating yourself so you can be the big wig and hang out and just like let it run by itself. That means you're a strong leader.
So I'm
excited for you.
Yeah. Here's a good
level 4.
A good concept that'll challenge a lot of people. A classic from Stephen Covey. Principle-centered leadership. Okay. Have principles or core values that you stand for. Integrity, honesty, love, respect, compassion, self-discipline, whatever they are. Okay. And then actually stand for them. And when I say stand for them, I mean, you uphold them first. You provide the example of what those core values and principles look like. Because the only reason that you would be uncomfortable holding someone accountable to those standards and principles is if you are not accountable to those standards and principles. If you uphold those principles every single day, then you're going to have no problem saying, I can do it. I expect you to do it too. So if holding people on your team is uncomfortable because they're not, meeting certain expectations or living up to a certain standard, the first place that I would look before I look to them is what kind of example am I setting, and am I accountable to those
That's
standards and
so true. Oh,
expectations?
self-reflection. No, it's so true. It's so difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. No, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it any more than the next person, but I find it to be a very valuable, I would say 80% of the time, it's my fault in my organization. When there's something not the way it's supposed to be, and I start doing some self-reflection, 80+% of the time, it's me, it's not
Right.
them. Even though initially I wanted to blame them, I discovered the truth, and I would rather know the
I love
truth than
that.
to be
And
right.
what is it? Do as I say, do as I say, not as I do. It's like, no, maybe not. Like, you just do as you do. But that's true. And
Right.
what's more respectable than somebody acknowledging that, like, oh, because I was wrong, or I should have told you this. Now you're both in agreement of what's going to change in the future to make sure you don't do that again. And whether that's an individual decision or it's a process breakdown, you uncover that. But if you're not talking about it, if you're just mad at each other or keeping it in and bottling it up, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to sit there like a seed and just keep growing until you just explode one day. And you're like, why didn't you do it this way? I didn't know you wanted me to, like, it needs to be, again, coming back to the communication, but making sure, you're leading by example, and I love that, the core values of the company, and then also your own self core values, staying true to those to make sure they align with yourself. So yeah. Okay. I always like to end these with your favorite success story. So as a coach, what is your favorite success story that coaching led to a practice growth? And you're like, oh my gosh, Abby, there's so many. And it could be recent, it could be forever ago.
My greatest success story.
Or your favorite. It doesn't have to be the greatest. Maybe it's the most transformational.
I'm a numbers guy, so anytime I get like massive growth, in short periods of time, that always feels great. Yeah. And the couple that come to mind is a client in Mississippi who started out. They had 3 operatories. Two of them were doctor. One of them was hygiene. You couldn't get a patient on their hygiene schedule for like 4 or 5 months, but the doctor's schedule wasn't full. And I was like, why do you need 2 doctor operatories then? They couldn't get new patients in. And so we took one of the doctor ops away from them, gave it to hygiene. And they went from like 30,000 a month to 90,000 a month in like 3 to 6 months.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Now they're completely fee for service. They're doing $1.5 million, very successful practice. Another one, I helped them buy their first location. They wanted a fee for service practice. Yeah. I convinced them that this PPO practice was the opportunity that they needed to capitalize on. And that practice has gone from, I think it was doing like 800, 850 initially. And here it is 4 years later, that practice is doing like 3.6.
Wow.
And they own multiple locations now. So I've helped them buy a few additional locations since then. So those are great examples, but I got to be honest, the biggest success story isn't a practice story.
Tell me more.
It is my fiance, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I have been coming from her past, she had a difficult upbringing. And coming from her past, didn't expect a whole lot from herself. She and I met about 3 years ago, got engaged right out a year ago. Getting married in April.
Congrats.
And to see, thank you. I appreciate that. And so she got me how much more success does she need?
Right? Yeah, right? Hey.
That's it, the jackpot there.
That's it.
But just to see her growth and evolution over time. And I don't say that, because of who she is to me. I say that just as a human being, seeing her growth, her personal growth, and seeing her go through overcome a lot of the self-imposed barriers and belief systems that I've had to overcome several of those myself. And I know what that work looks like, and I know how hard it is. And then I see her going through it and seeing her resilience and pushing through that and not letting it get the best of her. And, she's got a TED Talk scheduled in April.
She does.
Going to be doing a TED Talk.
Yes.
On overcoming adversity. And she's going through HPS with me. I mean, I've been just incredibly impressed. Like she is the definition of success. Like that is success. Success isn't an outcome. Success is a process. You know what I mean?
Oh.
It's like, it's accepting where you are. It's accepting where you are, seeing what you've got to go through to get to where you want, and being willing to step forward. Not once, not twice, but every single day. That's success.
Yes.
And so she does it every day.
Oh, I love that. And even just to have like your guys' partnership and be able to overcome it with each other and lean on each other is amazing. But I have to see that TED Talk. You have to send me the details and we can share it out. So I'm so excited. Good for her. That's amazing. And I mean, both of you are just always, I always love watching you guys. You're inspired in so many different facets of your life. It's incredible. So you're a coach in many different ways. So just always remember that and always appreciate that. But
I appreciate that.
Jon, it's been so great having you talk with me today. Thank you so much. And thank all of you for tuning in. If you guys want to learn more about unlocking your full potential and have Jon and their team take care of you, go to fortunemanagement.com. That's fortunemgmt.com. Or if you want to call Jon directly, call him at 931-563-5504. Thanks again, Jon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.